Last week, President Trump was asked if there were extremists on both the left and the right. He was actually asked this by Fox and Friends, and his exact words were, "I'll tell you something that's going to get me in trouble, but I couldn't care less. The radicals on the right oftentimes are radical because they don't want to see crime. The radicals on the left are the problem, and they're vicious, and they're horrible, and they're politically savvy." Do you agree with the president?
I don't speak for the president speaks for himself.
Do you agree with the president?
On what matter?
On the question that I just asked, do you agree with his statement about the radical left?
Ideology that's driving violence on both sides? Yes, that's what he acknowledged.
No, he didn't.
Representative Kamlager-Dove challenged FBI leadership, demanding accountability for how domestic terrorism is being tracked and whether political narratives are shaping what the public is allowed to know. This isn't partisan politics. This is public safety, justice, and truth on the line.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director, for coming here today. And actually, thank you for your response to my colleague from New York who asked you earlier about violent extremism. And you said that there is violent extreme ideology on both sides. And I think you actually alluded to that same statement yesterday in the Senate. So I too have some questions I'd like to ask you. These are not gotcha questions, and just deny, please, what you deem to be false. So Dylan Roof, who followed white supremacist propaganda, murdered 9 black parishioners in Charleston in 2015. Do you deny this?
I'm sorry. Dylan Ruth?
Roof?
Roof, can you give me some more information?
You're head of the FBI, you probably know this. If you don't know, that's fine.
If you can give me a reminder, I've got a lot in front of me.
It was national news. Robert Bowers murdered 11 Jewish worshipers in Pittsburgh in 2018.
I do remember that.
And it was the deadliest anti-Semitic attack. So do you admit that that happened?
I'm not saying the other thing didn't happen. I'm just asking for a little information.
Patrick Cruces, who posted a manifesto about a Hispanic invasion, walked into a Walmart in El Paso, Texas in 2019 and began firing. He murdered 23 people that day, and the youngest was 15. Do you admit or deny that that happened?
I'll take your presentation as accurate.
All right, well, I have to say all of these cases have been adjudicated. As I said, they are not gotcha questions. These incidents were national news. And as director of the FBI, you have access to all of this information. So in 2022, Peyton Grendon walked into a supermarket in a black neighborhood in Buffalo, New York, and started shooting. He murdered 10 people that day. And on September 10th, your friend Charlie Kirk was assassinated. Tyler Robinson has been taken into custody and charged, but also on that day, Desmond Holley, a 16-year-old white male, shot and injured 2 students at a high school in Colorado before killing himself. And according to the Anti-Defamation League, he had a fascination with mass shootings and white supremacy. So do you admit to, deny these facts?
Those happened.
Okay. Your predecessor, former FBI Director Christopher Wray, said that one of the most dangerous concerns is that racially motivated violent extremism, especially white supremacists, has been the biggest chunk of our domestic terrorism cases and is responsible for the most lethal attacks over the last decade. Do you admit or deny, A, that he said this?
I'll let the record reflect that. Whatever he said was what he said.
All right, and do you agree?
That there is racially motivated crimes being committed in America, yes.
Yes, especially white supremacists, which is the biggest chunk of our domestic terrorism. I'm glad that you said this. So last week, President Trump was asked if there were extremists on both the left and the right. He was actually asked this by Fox and Friends, and his exact words were, "I'll tell you something that's going to get me in trouble, but I couldn't care less. The radicals on the right oftentimes are radical because they don't want to see crime. The radicals on the left are the problem, and they're vicious, and they're horrible, and they're politically savvy." Do you agree with the president?
I don't speak for the president speaks for himself.
Do you agree with the president?
On what matter?
On the question that I just asked, do you agree with his statement about the radical left?
That there's ideology that's driving violence on both sides? Yes, that's what he acknowledged.
No, he didn't. He didn't.
Okay.
But I'm glad that you're saying that and actually creating some separation between you and the president. And I'm glad that you
That's literally
are
not what happened. He said
acknowledging
both.
that there is violent extremism on both sides. What's interesting is that the research arm of the Department of Justice, the National Institute of Justice, do you know what that is?
I'm familiar with them.
Okay, great. It is the research arm of the Department of Justice, and it published an article in 2024 devoted to domestic radicalization, violent extremism, and terrorism. I have it. It's interesting that it's no longer on the website. It has been scrubbed, but I ask these questions because what makes a strong, qualified director of any business, of any household, of the FBI, what makes a reputable prosecutor is not lapdog loyalty, but a commitment to the creed that evidence is agnostic and that the evidence will lead you to making the right decisions. And your job, no one's job is to like the data or the evidence, it is to collect it. That is how you gain trust. And Mr. Chair, I would like to enter into the record, if I may. White supremacist group stands by racist ideology with unanimous consent.
Without objection.
Dylan Roof, the radicalization of the alt-right and ritualized racial violence.
Without objection.
Thank you. Another article, how Robert Bowers went from conservative to white nationalist. I'd like to enter that into the record with me.
Without objection.
Patrick Cruces believed he was fulfilling Trump's wishes in El Paso attack, his attorneys said. I'd like to enter into the record.
Without objection.
Buffalo shooting, how far-right killers are radicalized online. I'd like to enter that into the record.
Without objection.
Evergreen High School shooters' online activity reveals fascination with mass shootings, white supremacy. I'd like to enter that into the record.
Without objection.
Murder and Extremism in the United States in 2024, a report by the Anti-Defamation League. I'd like to enter that into
Without
the record.
objection.
And the article, the report that was scrubbed from the DOJ just recently, the National Institute of Justice Journal focusing on domestic radicalization, violent extremism, and terrorism. I'd like to enter that into the record.
Without objection.
And lastly, the libertarian think tank Cato and their analysis on violent extremism and the right rising in extremist acts. I'd like to enter that into the record.
Without objection.
Thank you, and I yield back.
What we just witnessed in Congress was more than a standard Q&A session. It was a moment that laid bare how some officials handle the most pressing threats to our communities and whether political narratives are allowed to override facts and evidence. Representative Kamlager-Dove wasn't here to score points. She was here to hold the FBI accountable for its role in tracking domestic violent extremism, particularly the threats coming from the far right. This exchange centers on a simple, fundamental question. Does the FBI, under its leadership, acknowledge and respond effectively to white supremacist and racially motivated violence, which research shows has been the deadliest and most persistent domestic terrorism threat in the United States? Kamlager-Dove walked through some of the most notorious examples of far-right attacks in recent memory: Dylan Roof murdering 9 black parishioners in Charleston, Robert Bowers killing 11 Jewish worshippers in Pittsburgh, the El Paso Walmart shooting that left 23 dead, and the Buffalo supermarket shooting targeting black residents. Each of these incidents made national news, yet when asked if these events happened, Patel struggled to answer definitively. This wasn't a gotcha line of questioning. These were historical facts, documented tragedies. The fact that the head of the FBI appeared uncertain or evasive speaks volumes about the challenges we face when political narratives collide with the reality of domestic terrorism. Kamlager-Dove's approach highlighted another critical point: the ideological lens through which law enforcement interprets extremism matters. Patel, echoing the previous administration's messaging, repeatedly suggested that there is violent extremism on both sides, implying that left-wing extremism is as dangerous as the white supremacist terrorism that has repeatedly resulted in mass murder. The facts, however, tell a different story. For over a decade, research from the FBI, the Anti-Defamation League, and independent scholars consistently shows that white supremacist and far-right extremism is responsible for the majority of lethal domestic attacks. Recognizing this isn't about politics, it's about evidence. It's about understanding who is actually killing people in communities across the country and making sure law enforcement is prioritizing its resources effectively. Kamlager-Dove also pointed out that reports and studies on radicalization, domestic violent extremism, and terrorism, including research from the Department of Justice National Institute of Justice, have been scrubbed from official websites. This raises serious questions about how publicly available information is managed and whether there is a political effort to downplay or obscure the scale of far-right threats. This isn't abstract. Every day, extremists are radicalized online. They are reading manifestos, absorbing propaganda, and planning attacks. Dylan Roof, Robert Bowers, and Patrick Crusius didn't just wake up one day and commit murder. They were influenced by networks, rhetoric, and ideologies that normalize violence against marginalized communities. Recognizing this and responding effectively is a matter of public safety. And that's exactly what Kamlager-Dove was trying to emphasize. Data is agnostic. Evidence doesn't care about political loyalty. It doesn't care whether you're trying to protect a political figure or maintain a particular narrative. A strong, credible FBI director doesn't bend facts to fit politics. They let facts guide their decisions. Patel's repeated reliance on vagueness and his inability to engage with the concrete historical examples demonstrates a dangerous gap. When the head of the FBI doesn't fully acknowledge who the primary threats are, law enforcement resources may be misallocated. This isn't just bureaucratic inefficiency, it's lives at risk. Children, worshippers, shoppers, all vulnerable to attacks fueled by extremist ideology. Kamlager-Dove also highlighted the research showing how far-right actors are radicalized online, often with explicit racial motivations. From social media communities to propaganda videos, there's a clear chain of radicalization that has resulted in mass casualties. Acknowledging this threat isn't political, it's preventive. It's the kind of recognition that can save lives before tragedy strikes again. Finally, this hearing underscores the importance of truth in public service. Leaders like Kamlager-Dove remind us that accountability doesn't depend on party loyalty. It depends on acknowledging reality and acting on it. Politicians and law enforcement officials cannot afford to pretend that all threats are equal or that ideology doesn't matter. When we fail to prioritize evidence, extremism flourishes and communities pay the price.